At just 25, Amaka's life is anything but easy. She stands tall at 5 feet 8 inches, graceful and beautiful, but burdened with responsibilities that few her age can bear. Since her mother fell seriously ill, Amaka has taken on the role of caretaker and provider, not just for her mother but also for her 2 younger siblings. She works 2 jobs, weekdays at a small office and weekends cleaning houses. Every paycheck is stretched thin between rent, food, medication and school supplies. Still, she pushes forward with quiet strength and hope. Each month, she spends a small portion of her earnings on a single big win raffle ticket. It's her only gamble, her whispered prayer for a miracle. She always buys from the same shop, just a few blocks from her bus stop. This month was no different, until Tuesday evening. After a long shift, Amaka stepped off the crowded public bus and began the walk home. The streets were dim, the lamps flickering. She was only a few minutes from safety when 2 men jumped out from behind a kiosk. They didn't say much, just threats and demands. Her instincts screamed to run or fight, but something deeper, the fear of leaving her siblings motherless, told her to stay still. She handed over her bag without resistance. Inside that bag were her ID cards, her work badge, her ATM card, and her big win ticket which she had bought the day before. She got home shaken but silent. Her siblings needed dinner, homework help, and comfort. Her mother needed her medication. Amaka delivered it all with trembling hands and a forced smile. That Friday, a news broadcast caught her attention. The winning big win ticket was sold from a local shop in the Ejike area. The winner has yet to come forward. Her breath caught. That was her shop. That was the day she bought it. Heart pounding, she checked her little notebook where she wrote down her ticket number over the months. She gasped. It was her number. She rushed to the raffle office. She explained everything, the purchase, the robbery, and the stolen ticket. The woman at the counter listened patiently, then shook her head gently. We understand, but we need a police report. Something official to support your claim. Amaka blinked, stunned. She had never reported the robbery. Still holding on to a shred of hope, she hurried to the local station and tried to explain. The officer listened but frowned. If you didn't file a report when it happened, and didn't list the ticket among stolen items, there's nothing to tie your story to the winning claim. Amaka left the station numb. The miracle she had clung to might have slipped through her fingers. All because of one choice, one delay, one moment of silence in the face of trauma. Meanwhile, across town, not far from Amaka's neighborhood, lived Donald and his wife, Nancy. Life wasn't easy for them either. Donald was a scavenger, not by choice. Every day he searched through dumpsters, junk heaps, and abandoned corners of the city, looking for discarded items that still held value. He had an eye for what could be repaired, reused, or resold. Old shoes, cracked electronics, worn-out handbags, they all found their way into his wheelbarrow. Whatever he salvaged, he sold at the local Okrika market, where second-hand goods were bought and sold like treasure. On that fateful day, Donald moved through his usual routes. By mid-afternoon, his wheelbarrow was half full with finds. Behind a large restaurant dumpster in a quiet part of town, something caught his eye, a woman's handbag. It was surprisingly clean, almost new. No visible tears, no stains. Too good to toss away. He smiled to himself. His wife would love it. He didn't open the bag, just tucked it deep beneath other items, kept it safe through the day, and sold the rest of his findings at the market before heading home. That evening, he proudly presented the handbag to Nancy. "See what I found today, for you," he said, grinning. Nancy turned the bag over in her hands, admiring its quality. "This is not a cheap bag, Donald," she said, surprised. "Where did you find it?" "In a dumpster. Near Allen Avenue." Curious, she finally opened the bag, and froze. Inside were several items. A worn work ID with the name Amaka Ejike, a national ID card, an ATM card, and a crumpled piece of paper with large bold letters. "Big win raffle draw." Her heart skipped. "Donald," she whispered, holding up the ticket, "I think this is a winning ticket." Nancy turned the handbag over carefully, then unzipped the main compartment. Inside, along with a few scattered coins, an old work ID, and a worn ATM card, was a crumpled piece of paper. "Big win monthly raffle ticket." She blinked, remembering something. "Donald," she said slowly, "I saw a poster at the newsstand by the old barber shop. The one where those boys read newspapers and argue all day. The winning ticket was announced. I think this might be it." Donald looked up, suspicious. "How can you be sure?" "I remember the number. Not all of it, but the last 3 digits stood out. Look at this one, 786. It matches." Donald stood, grabbed the ticket, and without a word left the room. The newsstand wasn't far, a cramped space where old papers were tacked on boards and curious minds gathered to read headlines for a few naira. He pushed through the crowd, eyes scanning the board until he found the poster just beside the television. "Big win raffle, winning ticket, 349786. Prize, 30 million Nigerian nairas." His knees nearly buckled. He stared at the number again and again. It was real. When he got home, he looked like a man who'd seen a ghost. "It's the winning ticket," he whispered. Nancy sat down slowly, hands clasped. 30 million, she said softly. Then she stood up, firm and clear. "I'm saying we claim it. We say it's ours." Donald shook his head immediately. "No. I'm not a thief, Nancy. This bag belonged to someone. That girl's ID is inside." "But we didn't steal it," she insisted. "You found it? She's probably already reported it. Do you think they'll believe her? Look at us, scavengers. When will we ever see this kind of opportunity again?" Donald fell silent. The weight of her words pressed against his conscience. 30 million naira. Enough to lift them from poverty forever. No more dumpsters. No more hand-to-mouth life. He could open a real business. His wife could rest. They could start over. "But that girl," he murmured. "She's probably crying her eyes out right now. What if she needed that money for something important?" "So do we," Nancy snapped. "Don't we matter too?" Silence hung in the air like smoke. Later that night, Donald lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The ticket sat on the table, glowing faintly in the moonlight. A miracle had landed in his hands, but at what cost? The next morning, Donald sat at the edge of the bed, the ticket clenched in his hand. Nancy stood in front of him, arms folded. "You know this country," she said. "If we don't move fast, someone else will. And once the deadline passes, that money vanishes into the air." Donald nodded slowly. He had barely slept. The image of Amaka's ID card haunted him. Her smile, the faded lamination, the worn-out edges. But Nancy's words echoed louder. "We didn't steal it. We found it. We need this too." By noon, he had bathed, put on his cleanest shirt, and a pair of worn shoes. Nancy pressed the ticket into his palm and gave his shoulder a squeeze. "Be calm," she whispered. "Act like it's yours." The lottery headquarters in Ejike was nothing like Donald had imagined. It was sleek, glassy, air-conditioned. The kind of place he had never stepped into, not even to clean. He hesitated outside the gate until a uniformed guard waved him in. Inside, he waited behind a polished counter, his hands sweaty. A woman in a navy blue blazer smiled professionally. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you?" He swallowed hard, then pushed the crumpled ticket forward. I have the winning ticket," he said quietly. She took it, scanned it quickly, then looked up. "One moment, please." She disappeared into the back office. Donald stood still, heart thumping like a drum. His eyes darted around the lobby, gold-framed posters of past winners, a big screen showing prize draws, a digital counter blinking next winner in 12 days. Finally, the woman returned, flanked by a man in a gray suit and a security officer. "Congratulations," she said with a small smile. "This is the winning ticket." Donald's knees nearly gave out. "But," the man in the suit said, stepping closer, "there's just one issue. Protocol requires us to verify the claimant's identity. Can we see your ID, sir?" Donald froze. His throat dried. I don't have one on me." The man frowned slightly. "The prize is 30 million naira. For that amount, we'll need proper documentation. Name, address, bank information." Nancy hadn't prepared him for this. "I lost my ID," he said, voice barely audible. "Okay," the woman said gently. "No problem. If you can bring some form of documentation, voter card, national ID, anything, we'll move forward. Can't you just use the ticket? Donald asked. It's part of the requirement, the man said more firmly now. It's for your safety too. Fraud is common. Donald nodded, dazed. Okay, here is my voter's card. He left the building in a fog. Outside, the sun was blazing, but he felt cold. In the evening news, it was announced the winner, Donald has claimed the ticket. By morning, Amaka had made up her mind to fight for ticket. She rose before the sun, dressed simply, and tied her hair back with quiet determination. Her body was tired, but her spirit burned. She boarded the earliest bus to Ejike, staring out the window, her fists clenched in her lap. The moment she stepped into the big win lottery office, the receptionist glanced up with a smile. Good morning, how may I help you? Amaka stepped closer, voice steady. I'm here about the winning ticket. The one that was claimed yesterday. That man, Donald. He's not the real winner. That ticket is mine. The smile faltered. Ma'am, the prize has already been verified. I know, Amaka interrupted. But I came here last week. I told someone that my ticket was stolen in a robbery. I had just seen the winning number on the news and I came here immediately. The woman I spoke to wore glasses and had short hair. The receptionist blinked, suddenly attentive. You came here before? Yes, Amaka said firmly. I didn't have any documents because my bag was stolen. My ID, my ATM card, the ticket. Everything was inside. I explained that. She told me to get a police report. The receptionist reached for the phone and dialed. Please send Chioma to the front desk. Moments later, a woman in navy blue slacks and glasses approached. Her face lit with recognition. You, Chioma said slowly, walking closer. You were here last week. Yes, Amaka said, barely holding back tears. I told you everything. The robbery. The ticket. You said I needed to get a police report. Chioma turned to the floor supervisor who had just stepped out from a nearby office. She did, Chioma confirmed. She came in right after the winning numbers were announced. She said her bag was stolen, ID, raffle ticket, everything. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The supervisor folded his arms, now fully alert. What location did she say she bought the ticket from? The kiosk near the Allen Avenue bus stop, Chioma replied without hesitation. The supervisor exhaled. That's where the winning ticket was sold. Amaka's eyes welled, but she stood her ground. That man you showed on TV, he has my bag. My name was on the ID inside. If he found the ticket, he also found everything else. The room was silent for a beat. We're going to look into this immediately, the supervisor said at last. Amaka nodded slowly, feeling the tightness in her chest ease, if only a little. She was no longer invisible. This fight wasn't over. Donald arrived at the lottery office the next afternoon, a slight bounce in his step. He had even worn the same shirt from the interview. The receptionist greeted him with a reserved nod and asked him to wait in a private meeting room. A few minutes later, the floor supervisor entered with a neutral expression. A second staff member followed, clipboard in hand. Behind them, a plainclothes officer leaned quietly against the wall. Donald sat up straighter. Good afternoon, Mr. Donald, the supervisor began. Thanks for coming in. We're just following up on some details before your prize is finalized. Of course, Donald said, offering a careful smile. The supervisor glanced at his notes. Can you tell us again, where exactly did you buy your winning ticket? Donald's heart thumped once hard. He hesitated just a second too long. The kiosk near Allen Avenue, he said finally. I don't remember the name. Just a small place. They sell snacks too. The supervisor nodded slowly as if expecting that answer. You know, he said, tapping the pen against his folder, that kiosk's been in the news lately, because that's where the winning ticket was sold. A lot of people are talking about it. The supervisor leaned forward. Here's the thing, Mr. Donald, another person came forward today. A woman. She says the ticket was stolen from her during a robbery. She came to this office the day the numbers were announced and reported it. Donald's face flushed. I don't know anything about a woman. The supervisor raised a hand. For now, we've invited the police to investigate. Until then, the prize payout is suspended. You're not under arrest, Mr. Donald, but we'd appreciate your full cooperation moving forward. Donald nodded stiffly, sweat forming at his temples. Of course. He left the building with a heavy heart, the weight of every word echoing in his ears. At home, Nancy was waiting by the door. The moment she saw his face, her stomach dropped. What happened? They called the police, he said flatly. They know something's off. The woman came forward. The one whose bag I found. Nancy's eyes widened. Did you tell them you found it? No, I didn't, he snapped. She crossed her arms. So what now? We give it up? Just hand it back? Donald exploded. I told you this was trouble from the start. But you pushed. You said we should claim it. And you agreed, she snapped back. Don't put it all on me. They stood in silence, the tension thick between them. Finally, Donald sat down heavily. It's too late to undo it. They've seen my face on TV. Everyone knows. We can't back out now. Nancy sat beside him, quieter now. Then we have to see it through. They sat in the dim room, the weight of 30 million naira pressing down harder than poverty ever had. Detective Ada leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the case file. The air in the office was quiet except for the rustle of papers and the faint hum of the ceiling fan. His partner, Officer Joy, stood by the window, scanning the interview summaries. One says the ticket was stolen during a robbery, she said. The other says he bought it himself, clean and simple. But nothing's clean about this, Ada replied. The woman, Amaka, came here days before the winner claimed the prize. She reported the robbery and told staff she believed her ticket was the winner. She had no ID, no proof, but her story was on record. Joy tapped the folder. Donald, on the other hand, says he bought the ticket from the same kiosk Amaka named. The one near Allen Avenue. Ada stood. Let's find out who's telling the truth. Despite being called a kiosk, the store sat comfortably on the ground floor of a busy plaza. It was a proper convenience shop, stocked with snacks, soft drinks, phone recharge cards and a glass display near the counter advertising the big win raffle tickets. The floor was always buzzing, with 5 or 6 attendants working at any given time. Ada and Joy stepped inside and introduced themselves to the manager on duty, a neat woman in her late 30s with pressed braids and a name tag that read Ms. Beauty. She ushered them into a small corner near the stockroom for privacy. We're investigating a raffle ticket that was sold here last week, Ada said. The winning ticket, in fact. We have 2 people claiming it. Ms. Beauty crossed her arms. Well, we do sell a lot of those tickets. The day after the draw, this place was packed. Everybody wanted to know if it was their own that won. But truth be told, we serve hundreds of customers every week. I can't say for certain who bought what. Officer Joy pulled out a photo of Donald. Ms. Beauty studied it, then gave a slight shake of her head. He doesn't look familiar, but again people come and go. Ada nodded and then showed her Amaka's photo. Before Ms. Beauty could respond, a young male attendant who had been quietly restocking drinks behind the counter leaned forward. I know her, he said. She comes here often. Tall girl, quiet. She buys only 1 ticket every time, usually in the evening after work. Ms. Beauty glanced at him, a bit surprised. Are you sure? Joy asked. Yes, Ma, he said. I even remember her buying the last one. The week of the winning draw. I told her, you go win one day. Oh. Ada turned back to Ms. Beauty. So she's a regular. Ms. Beauty shrugged slightly. Well, my boys remember faces better than I do. But if he says she's a regular, I trust him. He handles the front most evenings. We appreciate your help, he said, standing. This helps us narrow things down. As they stepped back out into the afternoon heat, Joy looked over at Ada. She's got a witness. He doesn't. Ada nodded, his face hardening. And no CCTV inside. No timestamp. It's one story against the other, but hers is holding up. He paused, then pulled out his phone. Time to call Donald back in. Let's see how well his story survives the second round. After their visit to the store, Officers Ada and Joy didn't leave immediately. Something about the setup gnawed at Ada's instincts. He stood across the street, eyes scanning the row of buildings, deep in thought. "Sir," Joy said, pointing across the road. "That plaza. See that camera above the pharmacy sign?" Ada followed her finger. Mounted on the wall of a nearby building was a CCTV camera angled toward the main entrance of the street that led into the plaza where the convenience store was located. Joy narrowed her eyes. "It doesn't cover the shop itself, just the sidewalk leading into the street." Ada squinted, then nodded. "Still, if either of them came through the main path, it might show up. Let's visit the store and see the footage." In the office above the pharmacy, a technician pulled up the footage for Tuesday evening between 5:30 and 8 p.m. Ada and Joy watched in silence. The angle showed a constant stream of foot traffic. Commuters, market women, cyclists weaving through. Then, around 6 p.m., a familiar figure appeared. Amaka. She walked across the sidewalk, turned into the street leading toward the plaza, handbag at her side, wearing a light blue blouse. "Pause," Ada said. "That's her," Joy confirmed. Heading straight toward the shop. They fast-forwarded the footage, but Donald never appeared, at least not on that route. Joy raised an eyebrow. So he lied. Ada didn't speak for a moment. Then he pointed to the far end of the footage. "Not necessarily. Look there at the wall. There is a service pavement, probably used for trash bins and deliveries." Joy tilted her head. "You think he could have used that?" Ada nodded. "It connects to the rear compound of the plaza. Someone trying to avoid a busy front entrance, or just walking casually from the other side, could have used it." "No camera coverage on that side," Joy said with a sigh. "Exactly. So while we confirmed Amaka's direction of entry, we can't rule Donald out just yet." The news anchor Tolu Adebayo's voice rang out clearly. In a shocking twist to this month's big win lottery results, 2 individuals are now claiming to be the rightful owner of the winning ticket worth 30 million naira. The lottery board and the police are currently investigating conflicting reports submitted by both claimants. One, a known scavenger from the outskirts of Lagos. The other, a young office worker who says her bag was stolen in a robbery the same week the ticket was announced. Donald's face went pale as he watched with Nancy near the viewing center. It was dark outside. Nancy stood behind him, arms folded tightly. "What is this?" she hissed. "How did this get out?" "They showed my face. My name," Donald whispered. "What if the police come for us?" she asked, pacing. "What if they arrest us for lying? For fraud? I told you this would happen. I told you we shouldn't push it. And I told you it was too late to back out." They argued back and forth, voices low but tense, fear thick in the air. Eventually, silence settled. They walked home. At home, Nancy sat down, face in her hands. "Maybe we should just leave town. Pack up. Go to your cousin in Port Harcourt." "We run now, it's like admitting guilt," Donald said bitterly. "But what if they prove it?" she whispered. "What if they find something that shows the ticket was never yours?" The joy he once felt had drained out completely. Only dread remained. "We started this," he said quietly. "We have no choice now, but to finish it." The room was modest, bare but clean. A table, 2 chairs, a digital recorder, and 2 notepads. Officer Ada sat calmly across from Donald, who fidgeted in his seat, sweat beading slightly at his brow. Officer Joy stood near the door, arms folded, silent but observant. Ada flipped open a folder and clicked his pen. "Thank you for coming in again, Mr. Donald. Just a few follow-up questions to clarify a few things before we conclude our investigation." Donald gave a nervous smile. "Of course, no problem." Ada leaned in slightly. "You said earlier that you bought your raffle ticket from the kiosk at Allen Avenue, correct?" "Yes," Donald replied. "That's right. And you said you bought it sometime the week of the draw?" Donald nodded. "Yes, I think so." Ada paused. "What day exactly did you buy it?" Donald blinked. "Oh, I think maybe the 5th. "Yes, it should be the 5th. Joy quietly slid a printed calendar across the table. "That was a Sunday. The shop closes early on Sundays. Are you sure it wasn't another day?" Donald hesitated. Maybe it was the 6th then." Monday. Ada didn't look up. You sure about that? Donald opened his mouth then closed it again. Well, maybe it was the 7th. That was Tuesday, right? Joy spoke gently. Mr. Donald, it's very important we get the timeline right. The ticket was purchased on the 7th, confirmed by the lottery system and narrowed down to evening hours. Donald's face tensed. Yes, that's what I meant. The 7th. Ada looked him square in the eye. Then why did you first say the 5th? And then the 6th? Donald laughed nervously. Memory can be tricky. So many things happening that week. Ada didn't smile. How did you pay for the ticket? Cash, Donald said quickly. How much? 200 naira. Joy raised an eyebrow. Tickets cost 500. Donald paused, flustered. I meant 500. It was cash. Ada scribbled something in his notes. Joy stepped forward. Mr. Donald, there's no record of you ever visiting that kiosk. The staff doesn't know you. CCTV from across the street places. Amaka entering the plaza on the 7th. You aren't seen at all. And now your timeline's falling apart. Donald looked between them, his composure cracking. I don't remember exactly. It was a stressful week. Ada sat back slowly. What we're trying to understand is simple. Did you really buy that ticket? Silence. Let's take a short break, Ada said, closing the folder. But think carefully, Mr. Donald. We're not just interested in who held the ticket. We're interested in who owned it. The store buzzed with the usual late-morning rush. Ms. Beauty stood behind the counter, distracted, flipping through her ledger when a sudden thought hit her. She stopped, her eyes widening. How come we didn't remember? Chucks. She turned quickly to one of the attendants. Chucks. The boy who handles the raffle tickets. Where is he? One of the younger staff looked up, confused. Madam, he's still on vacation, ma. Another staff member, the same young man who had recognized Amaka earlier, chimed in. That boy? He is the computer for the tickets. Always writing things in that brown book like he is the manager. Miss Beauty blinked. Wait. The brown notebook, does he still keep it? Yes, ma, the boy said. Every customer who bought ticket from him, name, phone number, sometimes address, and the ticket number. He says he wants to call the winner himself if they ever sell a winning ticket. Miss Beauty stared at the floor, stunned. All this time, and no one remembered him? He's quiet, another staff member muttered. You know, autistic or something, but very smart and excellent memory with numbers. He always keeps to himself. We used to joke that he was carrying secret files in that brown book. Miss Beauty grabbed her phone and dialed. The line rang. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. His number's not going through. She looked around sharply. Call Officer Ada now. Tell him we may have something, someone. And someone else, go to Chuck's house. Take a Kiki if you have to. Bring him here. If he still has that notebook, we may finally have proof of who bought that ticket. Officer Ada was halfway through organizing the latest CCTV printouts when his phone rang. He answered on the first ring. Yes. Sir, it's Miss Beauty from the convenience store. Go ahead. There's a boy who works with us. Chucks. He's on leave, but he's the one who handles the raffle tickets. He keeps a personal record of everyone who buys. Name, ticket number, phone number, everything. Ada stood up straight. You're sure? He always said if we ever sold a winning ticket, he wanted to call the person himself. He might have the name of who bought the winning ticket. Ada's voice turned urgent. Do you know where he is? We're trying to reach him, but his number isn't going through. I've sent someone to find him. He lives on the mainland with his parents. Ada's heart raced, but his voice remained steady. If that brown book exists, we'll have the name of the rightful owner. He hung up and turned to Joy, who had just walked in. Call off the soft approach, Ada said. We may have a primary source, independent, written, and time-stamped. Joy's eyes lit up. That could end this. If Chucks confirms Amaka's name and ticket number, it's game over. Ada nodded. Unless, of course, the book says something else. The afternoon sun was bright but gentle, shining through the leaves of a big mango tree. Beneath the tree, In front of a small old cement house with peeling paint and a noisy zinc roof, Chuck sat on a low stool. He had no shoes on, and beside him was a plate of garden eggs. On his lap rested a thick brown notebook, his journal. He slowly turned through the pages one by one. His handwriting filled the book. Names, phone numbers, ticket numbers, all written neatly. Each page was marked with a date. The yard around him was quiet, except for the sounds of goats in the distance, children playing, and someone pounding yam in a nearby kitchen. Chuck smiled as he looked at his work. He had always taken raffle ticket sales seriously, even though some of the other staff in Lagos made fun of him. They didn't understand why he kept records. But Chuck's liked keeping things in order. He liked the idea of knowing exactly who bought each ticket, just in case someone won. He stopped at a page dated Tuesday the 7th. There were 5 names on that page, each next to a ticket number. He ran his finger down the list slowly. "I wonder who won this month's raffle," he said to himself. He glanced at his phone on the table next to him. It was still off. It had fallen and broken during their trip from Lagos. Out here in the village there was nowhere to fix it. He planned to get it repaired once he returned to Lagos at the weekend. Because his phone wasn't working, he hadn't heard the news. No calls. No messages. No updates. But he wasn't worried. Not yet. He gently closed the brown notebook and placed his hand on top of it like it was something precious. "I can't wait to get back," he said softly. "I need to find out who won." Officer Atta stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice firm but calm. "This case needs to be closed," he said. "It should have been simple. Now the press is everywhere and the commissioner is breathing down my neck." On the other end of the line, a senior officer at the Imo State Command listened carefully. "There's a boy, Chucks. He works at a store in Lagos. He keeps a journal with records of raffle ticket buyers. We believe he wrote down the name of the real winner." The line was quiet for a second. "I need him found," Atta continued. "Ask him if he still has that brown journal. If yes, put him on the next flight to Lagos. We'll cover the cost. This is urgent." Officer Ejike drove into the quiet village just as the sun dipped behind the trees. After a quick stop at the local station, he followed directions through narrow roads until he reached a small cement house with a tin roof and cracked walls. A few children played nearby. A young boy from the next compound ran over when he saw the police car. "Are you looking for Chucks?" the boy asked. "Yes," Ejike replied kindly. "Do you know where he is?" "He went to Amaka market," the boy said, pointing up the road. Ejike parked and stepped out of the car. He stood beside the gate, hands behind his back, waiting quietly. A few minutes later, an older woman stepped out of the house, tying her wrapper. Her face showed concern as she saw the police vehicle. "I hope all is well," she asked gently. "Yes, Ma," Ejike said with a respectful nod. "Everything is fine. I'm just looking for your son, Chucks." Her worry softened. "Is anything wrong?" No. Nothing to be afraid of." "He is not in trouble at all," Ejike reassured her. "In fact, we need his help. It's very important." She stepped closer, curiosity now mixed with pride. "Help? My Chucks?" "Yes, Ma. We believe he might be able to help solve something important in Lagos. I just need to speak with him when he gets back." She nodded slowly. "You can wait here. He should return before sunset." The sun had started to dip behind the trees when Chucks returned from Amaka market, a small nylon bag of fruits in one hand. As he approached the house, he noticed the police car and a man waiting near the gate. He slowed, cautious. "Are you Chucks?" the officer asked with a kind smile. "Yes, sir," Chucks replied, confused. "I'm Officer Ejike. I came from Lagos on urgent instruction. There's a situation involving the big win raffle ticket, the one from the store you work at. We believe your journal might help us solve it." Chucks blinked. "My brown book." "Yes. Do you still have it?" "It's safe, sir. I packed it in my bag when we traveled. I didn't want to lose it. We can check it when we get to Lagos." "Good," Ejike said with a nod. "You'll have to come with me immediately. The case is very important. The police in Lagos are waiting." Chucks looked toward the house, still holding his fruit. "I have to tell my parents." Of course. Lagos? Tonight? His mother asked, surprised. Yes, Mama. The officer says I can really help them. They said it's about the winning ticket, Chucks explained. His father nodded slowly. Go, my son. But keep that book close. It's important. Chucks hugged them both, grabbed his travel bag and followed Officer Ejike to the car. At the local station in Owerri, Officer Ejike quickly confirmed the last flight to Lagos, a Peace Airlines economy seat. The moment they arrived at Sam Bakwi Airport, Chucks looked around wide-eyed, amazed by the busy terminal, the sounds, the large glass windows and the blinking screens. He had never been on a plane before. After check-in and security, they walked to the boarding gate. Chucks stared at the plane through the window, smiling like a child. Soon boarding began. A friendly air hostess smiled at him as he stepped in. Good evening, sir. Welcome aboard. Chucks couldn't stop smiling. Thank you, Ma. He took his seat near the window and buckled in. His eyes scanned every button, every movement. As the engine roared to life and the plane lifted off the ground, he pressed his face near the window. It was a smooth flight. The lights of Lagos sparkled below as the plane descended, and minutes later the aircraft touched down on the tarmac. Chucks walked into the arrival lounge, travel bag in one hand, still buzzing with excitement. At the exit, Officer Ada stood waiting with a plane car behind him. He gave a short wave. Chucks. Yes, sir, Chucks said, walking over quickly. Ada gave him a warm handshake. Welcome to Lagos. We've been waiting for you. Chucks grinned. Thank you, sir. I brought the book. Good, Ada said, leading him to the car. Let's head to the station. We have work to do. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that hummed with things unsaid. Donald and Nancy slipped out of their small flat under the cover of darkness, heading toward the local viewing center, a crowded, open-air spot where people gathered to watch football and the evening news on a big TV. As they passed a small group of neighbors chatting by a kiosk, the conversation stilled. Someone muttered, low and bitter. Another whispered. They had seen the news. Donald avoided their eyes. Nancy's grip on his arm tightened. They reached the viewing center just as the channel switched to the 9 o'clock news. The anchor smiled and began reading headlines. Donald and Nancy stood at the back, barely breathing. But the raffle ticket story never came up. Local politics. Fuel price hikes. Road repairs in Ogun State. Nothing about the ticket. When the bulletin ended, Nancy exhaled sharply. Maybe we're in the clear. Donald didn't answer at first. His eyes were still fixed on the dark screen, his jaw tight. No, he said quietly. This feels like the quiet before the storm. Inside the softly lit office, Officer Ada sat across from Chucks, who now looked calm and focused. Joy leaned against the back wall, watching silently. We were told you kept records, Ada said. We need the one from the 7th, Tuesday. Can you help us with that? Chucks nodded. Yes, sir. I remember that day well. It was quiet. Only 5 tickets sold. Ada raised a brow. You remember the customers? Yes, Chuck said confidently. 4 men and 1 lady. It was a slow day, so I took note. Ada slid a small slip of paper across the table. Check this ticket number, 349786 against your record. Chucks reached into his travel bag, pulled out his well-worn brown notebook and opened it with care. He flipped to the page marked Tuesday 7th. His finger ran down the list of names and numbers. Then it stopped. This ticket, he said, tapping the page, belongs to the lady. Her name is Amaka Ejike. Ada leaned forward. You're sure? Yes, very sure, Chucks replied. I remember her. She used to come every month. Quiet girl. Always bought just 1 ticket. She told me once that her mom was very sick. Joy stepped closer. What time did she buy the ticket? Chucks didn't even hesitate. Around 6 p.m. She didn't stay long that day. She seemed deep in thought, barely said a word. Just bought the ticket and left. Ada stared at the entry in silence, then looked up at Chucks. You just solved a very important case. The air was cooler now, the day's pressure finally beginning to ease. Officer Ada stood by the office door, watching Chucks carefully return his brown notebook to his travel bag. "You've done well, Chucks," Ada said. "You should rest. It's late." Chucks looked up, rubbing his tired eyes. "You can sleep in the guest room upstairs," Ada added. "I'll have someone bring you food." Chucks nodded gratefully. "Thank you, sir." Ada picked up his phone and dialed. "Commissioner," he said when the line connected. "We've confirmed the rightful ticket owner. Her name is Amaka Ejike. Full details in the notebook. The ticket was purchased on the 7th, exactly as she claimed." There was a pause. "Well done," the commissioner replied. "Call the head of the raffle committee immediately. Let's clean this up. Public interest is high." Ada made the next call. "Sir, it's confirmed. The boy had records. We have the name, time, and supporting details." "Good work," the committee head replied. "Get an arrest warrant. Pick up the man who made the false claim. Let's close this the right way." The sun had barely risen when a black police van rolled quietly into the neighborhood. Donald and Nancy were inside mid-argument. She was holding a bag. "We should have left already." A knock at the door cut her off. Donald opened it slowly. 4 officers stood outside. "Mr. Donald Okafor, you are under arrest for providing false information in a financial investigation and attempting to fraudulently claim public funds." Nancy gasped. "No, please." Donald didn't fight. His shoulders slumped. "I knew this was coming," he muttered. Neighbors peeked from behind their curtains. Others gathered quietly, whispering. The murmur that had followed them for days now turned into a storm. The 12 o'clock news came on, this time with a bold red banner. "Breaking news. Real winner of 30 million naira big win raffle found." The camera cut to a press conference podium. The head of the raffle committee stood behind a bank of microphones, composed and confident. "Thanks to the excellent work of the Lagos State Police, especially Officers Ada and Joy, and the remarkable help of a very smart young man, we have identified the rightful owner of the winning ticket." Applause followed. The camera panned to show 4 people standing side by side. Officer Ada, tall, calm and proud. Her officer Joy, composed with her arms at her side. The head of the raffle committee, hands folded in front. And Chucks, holding his brown notebook, looking both proud and slightly overwhelmed. The crowd clapped louder. Reporters called out questions. The fan hummed lazily in the corner of the room. Amaka sat at her desk, typing quietly, eyes glued to the screen. Her inbox was full, deadlines piling up, and her head was still pounding from a restless night. Just then, a loud burst of voices echoed from the waiting area. People laughing, shouting, chairs shifting. "Turn it up," someone yelled. "That's her. That's her." She frowned, stood up, and stepped into the hallway. Her co-workers were gathered around the small television mounted on the wall near reception. Everyone looked stunned, faces lit with surprise and joy. "There she is," her manager shouted, pointing. "Amaka. You were announced the winner." Amaka's eyes snapped to the TV. Her breath caught. There, on the screen, was her face, standing just behind the head of the raffle committee during the earlier press conference. Her ID photo was shown again beside the winning ticket number. She stared in disbelief. For a moment, everything blurred. Then she dropped to her knees, hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Her body shook with joy. Some clapped. A few rushed over to hug her. Others simply watched in awe as her moment arrived. The news continued. And thanks to the careful record-keeping of a young store assistant named Chucks Nwosu, the case was resolved. The Lagos State Police confirmed the rightful ticket belonged to Ms. Amaka Ejike. For his honesty and support, Chucks has been awarded a special 1 million Nigerian nairas check by the raffle committee. The camera flashed back to Chucks, smiling nervously as he was handed the large ceremonial check. Amaka wiped her face, still shaking. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen, heart pounding. Unknown number. She answered softly. "Hello." A warm, formal voice came through the line. "Good afternoon, Ms. Ejike. This is the head of the raffle committee." Amaka gasped, her other hand flying to her chest. "Congratulations. And apologies for the delay. We're happy to inform you that your prize is ready. Please come in to receive it. Tears returned to her eyes. Thank you so much, she whispered. Behind her, applause broke out again. At long last, her miracle had found its way home. Saturday morning, Big Win Raffle Headquarters, Ejike. The main hall was decorated with banners, cameras, and a small crowd of guests and reporters. At the center stood Amaka, dressed simply but gracefully, eyes shining with quiet strength. A large ceremonial check bearing her name, 30 million naira, was presented by the head of the raffle committee, who shook her hand and smiled for the flashing cameras. Applause echoed around the room. Amaka blinked back tears and took a deep breath. Now my mother can have her surgery, she whispered. And I can finally start the virtual assistance agency I've dreamed of. Then, her smile faded slightly as a thought hit her. She turned to the committee head. What would have happened if I hadn't been able to prove I bought the ticket? The man's expression grew serious. Then, the money would have been forfeited. We would have kept it. That's our policy when no clear, verified claim is made. Wow, Amaka said softly, shaking her head. Her thoughts drifted immediately to Chuck's, the boy who kept the notebook, who had no reason to help her but did. I owe this to Chuck's, she murmured. Amaka arrived at the kiosk early. The morning sun warmed the storefront, but Chuck's wasn't there. Inside, Miss Beauty greeted her with a warm smile. You're our champion, she said. I'm looking for Chuck's, Amaka said. I wanted to thank him. Miss Beauty nodded. He's not back to work yet, but I can give you his home address. The small compound was modest but clean. Amaka knocked gently on the front door. Moments later, Chuck's mother opened it, smiling warmly when she recognized her. Good afternoon, Amaka greeted. My name is Amaka. Yes. Chuck's told us everything, the woman said proudly, calling inside. Chuck's, come on. She's here. Chuck stepped out shyly, wearing a simple shirt and holding his brown notebook under his arm. Amaka smiled. I came to say thank you. Without your help, that money would have been lost forever. She turned to his parents. You raised a remarkable son. Chuck's lowered his head slightly, smiling. I'm grateful, she continued, reaching into her handbag. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. He opened it slowly, his hands trembling. 5 million Nigerian nairas. 5 million naira. He looked up, stunned. But, why? Because I wouldn't be standing here without you, Amaka said gently. You deserve it. Chuck's mother gasped, covering her mouth. His father stepped forward, holding his son's shoulder. Tears welled in Chuck's eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much. Amaka smiled, heart full. Thank you, Chuck's. Amaka's voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered with emotion. The little compound buzzed with a quiet joy. Chuck's mother whispered prayers of blessing. His father, unable to find the words but letting his teary eyes say them all. Chuck stood still, clutching the envelope like it might float away if he let go. I didn't do it for money, he finally said. I just thought it was the right thing. I know, Amaka replied with a soft smile. That's why it means so much. There was a pause. The moment held something sacred. Take care of yourself. I believe you'll do something great with that notebook. Chuck's nodded slowly, the edge of a smile tugging at his lips. Amaka stepped back, gave one last wave to the family. The sun was dipping lower now, casting golden light over the rooftops. As she walked away, her heart felt light. The reward was more than the money. It was knowing that her life, and someone else's, had changed for good. Each step away from the house felt like a step into something new. She smiled and kept walking, not out of survival but into her new purpose.